Okay, we just shot the video, but I'm actually going to put this at the beginning of the video. I just want to say right now, right up front, number one, apologies to huge fans of the series. I went in a little more than I was expecting to, and I also want to apologize because this is all over the damn place and has no organization whatsoever. So just, if you're a fan of the series as a whole, like all five, or you just know those movies, or even if you don't like them, you'll hear a lot of things you'll probably want to hear, but just putting it out there, this video is all over the damn place. So be prepared for this to have no coherency whatsoever, right? Okay, so have fun. Alright, so one of the last times we were here, we were talking about the Mummy trilogy. And if I remember correctly, that went up on Halloween, or around Halloween, like last Halloween. And to my understanding, Owen has informed me that that'll probably be the same for this one. It'll go up on Halloween, or at least around that area. So yeah, we're shooting this like a month in advance or so. But yeah, so this video has been a long time coming, and you've been the one bringing it up. Where you're like, we could. You apparently don't even need much prep. You were like, I could talk about the Pirates movies whenever.
Yeah.
And I kept telling you, I was like, I'm gonna need to rewatch them though. And to be honest, it's hard to find excitement for me to do that. So it's taken this long for me to get around to it. And I have, because to kind of somehow I kind of went into this at the start, it was the fact that the first one is the only one that I'm kind of passionate about. For a while, I thought people were with me as far as not thinking Dead Man's Chest and At World's End were all that. But now they're like, apparently it's seen as like the whole trilogy is one of the best things ever, and everybody just kind of sees it as the trilogy now. But I've always had some interesting and mixed feelings about Dead Man's Chest and At World's End that I guess apparently don't match what a lot of people feel. So revisiting them was interesting. I've realized that I don't think I dislike them as much as I used to, but there's still a lot of moments where the cats are scratching the couch. They have their moments, but I'm also skeptical. But I've always had a very controversial opinion about this series, and I have found that actually has not changed after revisiting all five of them. This is my first time revisiting the fifth one since the theater. And then the others. I think I marathoned them when Dead Man Tell No Tales was coming out, and that was the last time I'd seen them like all the way through, and was just kind of watching them in and out though. But how do you feel about the series as a whole? And I guess especially emphasis on the first three.
I think it definitely goes downhill after the first one. Personally, I didn't really need the story continued. I thought the first one wrapped up rather nicely.
Yeah.
I don't really see where it left an opening for something else to happen.
Well, they did. What's interesting about these movies that they don't quite get credit for is they were doing post-credit scenes before it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember the first one, because I was working at the theater when it came out, and I'd seen it so many times, the damn monkey. And then I was working at the theater when the second one came out, and I saw the dog over and over again.
Yep. I was going to say, I guess we can just go a movie at a time. Well, we know a little bit that you loved the first one because when we did our top 15 of all time video, I believe it was either your honorable mention or 15.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Yeah. So we touched on it a little bit, but I guess we can go back into it because it's obviously the one that we're the most passionate about. And I feel like I think I saw it in theaters 3 times.
It's a great movie, like, for a theatrical experience.
Yeah, I remember the first time we saw it, I would have only been like 13. It came out like at the end of the year, right?
I think it was like summer of 2003.
Oh, was it? Yeah, it was a very big year.
Late summer?
It was a very big year because Return of the King was that year also.
Yeah.
And I remember them kind of blending together in my mind a little bit as far as the big blockbusters we were seeing at the time. But even though I saw this in theaters 3 times, and so I'm sure you saw it many more, especially since you were working there at the time.
I think all the way through I only saw it 2 or 3.
Because I want to say all 3 times I saw it you were there, but one of them you might not have been.
Maybe.
But I remember vividly the first time seeing it. I remember like all the audience reaction. I remember my initial reactions to a lot of things. And there's a lot in this movie to take in when you don't quite know what you're in for, which is what I kind of felt like. The only thing I remembered was the teaser trailer of the skeletons walking under the sea.
Yeah.
Which was very, very cool.
Yeah, it definitely did get you hyped.
And very, very cool in the context of the movie as well. But I remember going in, and because I don't know that I'd ever really experienced a pirate movie like this outside of Hook at the time. And so this was like a really, really big thing. And this was like the return of the pirate movie after Cutthroat Island kind of killed it. But the thing was that there were so many different elements to it. What's like the first thing you remember standing out as far as like your initial reaction to it?
It just felt very big, especially like the ocean shots when the ship was going. It felt massive.
You know what honestly stood out to me the most, and is now kind of big. I guess it was always the case, and it comes with the territory. But I feel like here especially, it kind of felt like a turning point. I remember being very surprised how funny it was. Going to see a big, action-y pirate adventure movie and getting essentially a comedy. Like it has that much comedy in it. And with Sparrow himself being like a fully comedic character. Like if he has a dramatic beat, there's like maybe one or two in there brief.
I remember when he was nominated for his Oscar. I remember a lot of people said that it was the first like outright funny character that had been nominated in a while.
Yeah, and people don't realize how close he was because he won SAG. And it's like everybody was saying like, oh, that was Sean Penn versus Bill Murray, and it's like Depp won SAG. He was in the conversation for sure, and that would have been crazy, by the way. Like what I wonder what his career would be like if that had happened, and where like I almost feel like that would have changed a shift entirely because these movies already made a shift entirely as is. And like to have this prestige factor attached to them, at least the first movie. I mean, the second one is an Oscar-winning movie for visual effects, which I think is large in part due to Davy Jones. But this one, I also remember the atmosphere a lot because the fact that there's supernatural elements in it also makes it feel especially unique to being a pirate movie, on top of being a comedy, on top of being an action movie, on top of having supernatural elements. It's got so many things in it.
I think the atmosphere also helps too. In the first one's very bright and happy. Like most of the scenes are in the daylight for the most part that you remember. Like all the ships going was in the daylight and everything, and you could see everything. And you could see how massive it was and the detail that went into it. But then it felt like most of Deadman's chest was shot in the dark. It's like somebody forgot to bring the lights with them.
Yeah, especially in the Flying Dutchman scenes.
Which
makes sense because they're basically engulfed in a storm the whole time. But even so, the visuals get a bit redundant when we get to Deadman's Chest and at World's End especially.
Yeah.
But here, like when I think of like how ominous it is, like even before those supernatural elements, like the opening scene is like it's just Will and Elizabeth meeting. But there's something so ominous and very ghost story-like about like how the first thing we see is the upside-down umbrella just floating up to the ship.
Yeah.
And then when she sees the Black Pearl in the distance before she wakes up, and it's like that's amazing. And it's like to set it up as like a dream sequence, but also as something that happened, and how it's like this blurred line. It's an amazing opening. And then essentially it gets pretty bright, and then it becomes a comedy, which is not a bad thing for this movie, because Jack Sparrow was one of those characters where when you go to appreciate Jack Sparrow, you've got to think back to before he'd been played out, when we were seeing him for the first time, and I love the way he's so iconic in so many ways. Where not only is he like instantly recognizable and just his personality and demeanor are instantly recognizable, but think about this when you talk about the comedy of the movie, but the movie's iconic standing. That first shot we get of Jack when he's on the mast of the boat and he's looking on as he's coming to the dock, and that's like the shot of Jack Sparrow that you always see. That is the iconic introductory shot of this character, and it always is. Anytime you see Jack Sparrow in like any kind of pop culture, that shot is probably in there because it's this epic looking shot. And that shot is the setup to a punchline. because the boat's tiny and sinking.
Yeah.
But somehow that shot by itself has not lost its luster, even with that context.
I think it's because it's playing the big like music with it too.
Yeah, the score is a big part of this movie's iconic status as well. And I love the fact that every movie, even after they change directors, has had the good sense to end with the main theme when it first starts. The end credits first start. But also, I feel like all of Jack's
It's like all the Bourne movies using extreme ways.
Yes. Now I want to switch them and see what it's like.
Man, I really want to see the Bourne Identity credits with the Pirates theme now. Especially since there's like moving parts in the credits and stuff.
Yeah.
And the other one's just like black screen.
But there's also, I think on Stranger Tides and Dead Men Tell No Tales have stuff in the background, but the Verbinski movies are just the black screen, which is great. And it's great how they can do the black screen and still feel like really epic. And I feel like, Klaus. Oh my God, what's his fucking name? That's embarrassing.
Is it Liddell?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yes, very embarrassing to say that's one of the big praise factors of this movie and forget his name. But yes, I believe that's correct. But have you noticed also how iconic a lot of Jack's lines are by themselves? Also, like think about all of the Jack Sparrow lines that you know. There's probably a lot. There's you'll always remember this as the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow, especially since we get it multiple times. Sometimes in a comedic nature, sometimes in an action nature. I love But You Have Heard of Me. Just him saying the word savvy, I would consider iconic.
I feel like with that line, like Jack Sparrow was like the original like social media streamer.
Yeah. And then there's also stuff that I wouldn't call iconic lines, but I love. The first movie has such good dialogue. That's something that's really missing. I mean, it's throughout like the way everything is phrased and like the era of the dialogue is always present. But I love, and you'll notice also because they're lines that get repeated throughout the franchise that they kind of stuck to. It's like it kind of would have been nice if they tried to come up with new iconic lines. But there was also when he's first fighting with Will, and he says something like, "You look familiar. Have I threatened you before?" And it's like stuff like that. And I really wish that the dialogue had more originality like that as the series went on, instead of just doing callback lines all the time. And that's how you could tell, like, even they knew which ones were like really stuck and which ones were really working.
Kind of like I've got a bad feeling about this for Star Wars. Like, in the original trilogy, it meant something different than it does in the newer movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that really does work, and it's like there's times where it seems like it could be lazy callbacks, but there's other times where callbacks can really work. But I don't know that these movies ever really nailed the callbacks as much as they had hoped to. But talking more about the dialogue, especially, I especially love the scene where he fights Will. And there's the moment where he's like, when he starts taunting him about a girl, he doesn't even know the Elizabeth thing yet, and he's already taunting him about the girl and stuff like that, and then he makes the eunuch remark. The eunuch remark is in such passing, and then becomes such a played out... I think it's referenced in every movie, isn't it?
I think so.
And it's like, even the one that Will's not in, or is he in every one? Was he in On Stranger Tides for a second? No, they're not on Stranger Tides at all, are they?
No, I don't think they're in the end credits or anything.
Yeah, they're briefly in Dead Men Tell No Tales. That's what I'm thinking of. That's the thing, is after a while they blend together, man. But yeah, talking about the way they do some of the action itself, like the way they do the fights and the way things feel big, but they're not. If there's something that really gets to me about, I feel like we can basically talk about Dead Man's Chest and At World's End as if it's one movie, because it basically is. But there's something that I guess we could go ahead and bring the last two movies in as well when we talk about this. But you know what honestly my big problem is with the portion of the Pirates movies that I don't like is how exhausting the action is. because you look at how gigantic Dead Man's Chest and At World's End are, and they're obviously supposed to feel, that's the whole idea, is that they feel as big and massive as humanly possible. I guess before I continue this thought, I need to say my controversial opinion, which I can't remember if you know it or not. That everybody loves Curse of the Black Pearl, everybody loves Dead Man's Chest, everybody loves At World's End. Apparently. This is a little bit news to me, but apparently that's the case. People hate On Stranger Tides, and they don't really care for Dead Men Tell No Tales. Mm-hmm. As far as I know. On Stranger Tides is my second favorite after The Curse of the Black Pearl. And like I said, I felt that way for a while after I'd first seen it and as time went on, and having just rewatched them recently, I stand by that. I stand by On Stranger Tides. And that's not just I hate the others that much. I think On Stranger Tides has merits. And one of the things is that you'll notice the action is at a particular scale in the first movie, right? Where like it's big. Like you were talking about when we first saw it, it feels so big and adventurous. And like, you know, the swashbuckling we hadn't really seen in a mainstream movie in 2003 at the time, like in our lifespan. Mm-hmm. And then the next two movies tried to amplify that in this. It's like, don't Dead Man's Chest and At World's End feel significantly bigger than Curse of the Black Pearl. Mm-hmm. And then I like that On Stranger Tides and Dead Men Tell No Tales kind of brought it back down to the scale of the first movie. Because Dead Man's Chest and At World's End are so big, it's fucking exhausting. Those movies wear me the fuck out, and not in a good way. And the fact that they go, just how big they are and that they go on and on and on. And here's the thing as well, is back in the day, I especially would go after Dead Man's Chest. When we came out of that movie in the theater in 2006, I fucking hated that movie. And I will tell you, it was because everything felt like it went on and on. That fucking wheel. I remember specifically, when I turned on the Pirates movies, was when the entire bottom half of my body went numb by the time we reached that fucking wheel. And the wheel shit goes on and on and on and on. And I was so jaded by this experience, seeing Dead Man's Chest and feeling worn out, I did not see a Pirates movie in the theater again until Dead Men Tell No Tales. I did not see At World's End in the theater, and I did not see On Stranger Tides at the theater. And Dead Man's Chest, I think, did that. Like, I consciously made the decision, it's like, I can't... Like, it was a whole year between Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not very long when you look at the way they're spread out, but I mean, a year is a long time in between movies, but by the time At World's End came out, I was still fucking tired from Dead Man's Chest. And again, like I said, usually and I think the reason people give this because here's the thing. I was making, when I was talking about the King Kong movies, I was making this comparison. Think about this. And I will explain why I do think there is a difference here, but I'm just talking in general terms. Well, actually, I'll see if you can answer this question. Like, what maybe the difference would be. Very, very long movies that really don't need to be long, with action scenes that go on and on and on and on and on and on forever, very effects heavy, very CGI heavy, and go on forever, make these movies 3 hours long. Why do people love Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, but hate the Transformers movies?
Maybe they like the story better, I don't know.
Maybe.
Plus, Transformers has a fandom it can piss off.
Yeah, I say that, where it's like, obviously Transformers does have a fan base, but...
I think the main problem is that the first one, yes, there's undead pirates, but when compared to everything else, it's pretty well grounded. It feels like the first one is an action-adventure movie, and it feels like every movie after that is a fantasy movie.
Yeah, I kind of felt like you were headed in the direction that I was going as to what I think the difference is, even though I don't think it makes too much a difference to me personally. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can imagine. The direction I was going was that when you see an action movie in the Transformers movies, it's all CGI. Mm-hmm. Every single thing on screen is pretty much CGI. Mm-hmm. With the exception of an actor here and there, and even then they'll go into CGI at some point, depending on what's going on. Mm-hmm. Even though there is a shitload of CGI in those two Pirates movies, there's also a ton of actual actors there on the actual ship sets being pelted by actual wind and actual water, while the CGI is also being put in around them. So there's enough real elements in there that it's above a Transformers movie as far as action goes. But man, I get the same feeling watching both of them. And it's like, I can appreciate what's going on in the Pirates movies more, but I mean, how do you feel about the action scenes specifically in Dead Man's Chest and at World's End?
I mean, they do go on for a while.
Yeah,
and it's not like I feel like I bring up this movie every video, but it's not like the last fight in Endgame where there's so many different characters the fight can stay fresh because everybody has different abilities and things they can do. But if we're spending a fight scene that long with like 4 people, it wears out its welcome.
And with something like Endgame, like every other beat is like a payoff to something.
Yeah.
But
it's a fan service fight.
Yeah, or seeing characters team up we haven't seen team up before, something like that. But yeah, but I also think, and I don't want to seem like I'm being like aggressive, like I'm being confrontational. But it's like I think about how many people love the Pirates movies, and I also think about how many people watch movies with their phones in their hands now. And so it's like, if you're not watching a movie head on, you may not notice when stuff is going on and on and on and on. Like if you're watching a Pirates movie and you're glancing at your phone a lot, it may not occur to you like how much this shit just goes on and on. And oftentimes it's pretty repetitive. Like you'll see, like there'll be a sword fight here and there, somebody will swing here and there, and cannons will be going off, and pirates will be screaming, and there'll be comedic bits going on with Pinto and Brigetti every now and then. Brighetti's always losing his eye. But it's just all the same shit, and it just runs on a loop, and it's like, it astonishes me every time how long this is, especially at World's End's the one that almost reaches 3 hours, and Jesus fucking Christ, man. It's a lot. And that's not even talking about the story beats that we go into. Who do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Will and Elizabeth next? Or do you want to talk about Barbossa a little bit?
We can go with Barbossa if you want.
That works for me.
Because I know that you feel like there was an injustice done to him.
Oh, yeah.
A couple.
Yeah. And I think but especially hurts is how amazing he is in the first movie. Like, Johnny Depp got an Oscar nomination and won a SAG award for playing Jack. I feel like Jeffrey Rush as Barbossa in Curse of the Black Pearl is equally award-worthy. And it's as far as him playing like a very sort of classic villain of this genre, he's like right up there with the best incarnations of Captain Hook. And the fact that he's undead and that he has like certain motives, like all the guy really wants is an apple. Like that's what's driving essentially. But there's just something so sort of delightful. Jeffrey Rush playing villains, and campy villains at that. Like when we were the first time we ever saw Jeffrey Rush was Mystery Men, and this was only 4 years later. It seems like they were so far apart in our memories, but they were only 4 years apart. And it's like when you think about Casanova Frankenstein playing this villainous pirate is amazing, and he's amazing in it
because he's an amazing actor.
Yes. And playing these villains is something that he really, really sinks his teeth into. See his performance in Quills, which is my favorite Jeffrey Rush performance, where he will just go so far over the top, but always when it's appropriate. Like, I feel like he's never gone, like, too over the top as far as at least something like this. It's always for, like, at least when it's maybe just a little bit more than what's asked for, which is exactly what you want with over the top. That's why it's over the top. Because what's asked for is the top, and you're going over that. So, any other opinions on him in Curse of the Black Pearl, specifically?
No, like you said, his motivations are disgustingly simple.
Yeah.
The first movie, when compared to the others, is disgustingly simple, which is crazy to say about a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah. Like we were saying, because there's so many elements in it. Yeah,
and it's simplistic at 2.5 hours and doesn't wear out its welcome.
Yeah.
Those are 3 hard things to put in the same bowl.
And the action is just as exhilarating as it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you look back after the tainted nature of Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, it doesn't feel...
And the comedy
tired
still
like
clicks.
Yeah. And Barbossa has those moments also, like, I like his delivery of "it means no." And, what was the other? "Not you, we named the monkey Jack."
Yeah.
Once again, stuff that just keeps coming back as callback lines that you would think would lose their luster, but no, when you go back, they're still there, and thankfully that's a relief. And then, I guess we should talk about when I was sitting in the theater, very, very pissed off at Dead Man's Chest, and it was like, "You fucking piece of shit. How dare you keep me here like a prisoner? You better fucking end soon before I take us all out." And then... and then, Dead Man's Chest gave me a gift. I remember, much as I hated that movie, hated that experience, could not feel the bottom half of my body, the last scene made me very, very happy. And just when I was ready to give up on life, when I was ready to snap my own neck in the theater, so that the experience would end, like, it's like, if they were not going to end it, then I'm going to end it. Then Naomi Harris starts being all cryptic, says you're going to need a captain, and we start seeing the descent. I'm even looking at a staircase right now, it's perfect. And we see a descent, and it's like, oh, who's this? What cameo is this? Have we heard any rumblings of who's going to be a new character in this franchise? What's this? And then it's Barbossa. And it's like, holy shit!
And he got his apple.
Yes!
And he was happy about it, too.
Yes, and you know how much I hate resurrecting the dead.
Yeah.
And it's... but that moment was like, holy shit, where's this going?
And then he's just babyface all through At World's End.
Yep, At World's End is where we ended up. And there's not even like a ceremonious nature to him in At World's End. Like, he's just, like, after that big entrance, he's here now. He's just here now. He's a good guy now. They don't even really say he's a good guy now. Like, the end of Dead Man's Chest felt ambiguous. Like, holy shit, is he good? Is he bad? What are his intentions? Is he going to turn on them? Is he going to help them? What is this? So many questions, and only a year to figure out what it's going to be. Well, as you know, I didn't go to the theater, so I didn't give a fuck.
Do you think it would have been better if they would have had him turn heel in At World's End, and instead of having, like, Davy Jones be on the side of that little fucker that it was Barbossa had turned heel to join him?
Oh yeah, you're talking about Beckett.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beckett. What a fucking heel. Of all the... Oh my god. Okay, so, okay, where was I going now? Oh yeah, so yeah, a big common theme throughout the whole franchise is pirates turn left and right. Jack, through the whole series, is turning left and right. Is he good? Is he bad? Is he trustworthy? Is he
He's
not?
like the Big Show of pirates.
Yep. I'll take your word for it. And then, sure enough, more people start to come in. Norrington. Norrington's really unpredictable. And that's fun. And then Will starts coming in. Will and fucking Elizabeth are coming in. It's like, am I good? Am I bad? Am I going to betray you? Am I not? Everybody's doing that except Barbossa. Barbossa's the only one that's loyal, and that almost makes me okay with it. But it's like, dude, I really miss Villain Barbossa throughout the series. I really, really do. And it's like, just when I get to the point where it's like, okay, if he's going to be the only one that's loyal, then I can kind of get... I mean, in On Stranger Tides, we kind of hear about that, but it's more of like stuff that happened between movies.
Well, not only that, but in On Stranger Tides, they make him more of a sniveling heel versus in the first one where he was an actual evil heel.
Yeah, he's getting more back in that territory until we get to the fucking... Do you want to call that a twist in Dead Man Tell No Tales? Dead Man Tell No Tales, but that's... But yeah, when we get to the point when it's like he's at peak Barbossa in Curse of the Black Pearl, then his reveal at the end of Dead Man's Chest is fucking amazing. And then it's like, oh, he's a good guy, I guess. You know the straw that breaks the camel's back. Because we talked about it one of the last times I was here. Because we were watching a clip on YouTube where somebody had put lightsabers in place of the swords. It was very, very well done. And the cannons were shooting like beams.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And the clip that they played to show this off was the final fight on the Flying Dutchman. Okay, the final fight on the Flying Dutchman. This is the culmination of the whole Davy Jones storyline. Davy Jones, who, yes, is a worthy successor as a villain to Barbossa in the first movie. Bill Nye is amazing under all of his... We're assuming that's motion capture, I believe?
I think so.
And we talked about... I know you've praised Davy Jones plenty in the past as a villain, playing his fucking organ, all that crazy shit. Like, there's times when I see Davy Jones playing the organ, and it's like, I understand the level of crazy they were trying to go. And this is what they had in mind, but none of the rest of the movie matches it. That's the problem. The rest of the movie cannot live up to Davy Jones playing the organ. And
he even has a really cool scene where he's going around asking people if they fear death. And...
So, what all's going on during the final fight with Davy Jones? We've got all this chaos. We've got the big fight going on. We got the big part that was in all the trailers of him and Jack, like, up in the fucking sails fighting. The rain is going on. The heart's getting passed around like a hot potato.
There's a key being hunted for.
Yep. And
then there's a wedding ceremony. What would you want Barbossa to do? Just decapitate Will and be like, oh, surprise, cockface.
Old Barbossa would have done that.
Dude, now I just want to hear Jeffrey Rush say surprise, cockface.
Well, he does say she's a hand job giver in the Banger Sisters.
Oh, man.
But here's the thing.
That's nowhere near surprise, cockface. Dressed as a pirate in the middle of a sword fight.
And it's
he should have said it when he came down the stairs.
Oh no, I was gonna say it was like, hey Barbossa, will you marry us? Instead of I'm a little busy at the moment. It's she's a hand job giver. It's like, how do you know that? First you made out with Jack, and then you killed him, and now this, and it's like because they turn into a fucking soap opera. This whole thing of oh no, she's kissing Jack, and oh there's a misunderstanding. I cannot fucking believe. It's one thing to do the romance thing, but to put the
she thinks you're too mad.
But to put the misunderstanding cliche in it, and not only that, but like at the end of the movie, one of the cliffhangers of Dead Man's Chest is, by the way, we killed the main character. Of course we didn't, because these characters are as good as killing off characters as fucking X-Men is. But yeah. You can't even use Logan as an excuse now!
Whoa.
But it's... You can't say, oh, nope, they killed Wolverine forever. Nope, Ryan Reynolds says go fuck yourself, as usual. And I say go fuck yourself right back, Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
but, here's the thing. Where were we? Oh yes, they were supposedly killing Jack in Dead Man's Chest, but we know that's not actually going to be the case. Yeah, so we're doing all the love story cliches. I was going to ask you, yeah, it's like we started with, oh, hey, do you want to talk about Barbossa or Will and Elizabeth? And now this talk of Barbossa has gotten us here, but yes, as you put it.
Dude, we should have started from the other way. we should have started with Will and Elizabeth and worked our way to Barbossa.
Probably.
Good lord.
So, but yes, you are correct. The wedding scene is what I find to be the straw that broke the camel's back. The fact that he was being very, very kind when he said, "I'm a little busy at the moment," as was everyone. And I get it's supposed to be romantic. They kiss while the bombs and the shit are going off around them. But I mean, bombs and shit are going off around them. We gotta okay, cannons. Obviously not like
no, the bomb dude was in the first one.
That's right. Yeah.
I miss that guy.
Okay. So.
Oh man, I'm Bill Murray in Ghostbusters. I'm gonna miss him. He ain't coming back.
You're talking about the no fair guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's his last line, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh.
Many of their last lines, like none of the rest got a last line.
Oh man, he died feeling like he's getting fucked over. That's a terrible way to go. That's a restless spirit waiting to happen. Anyway, we can get off Bomb Guy now.
Well, that brings us to...
Unless you'd rather talk about Bomb Guy if it makes you happier.
I was going to say, that brings us to Will and Elizabeth, who we have to address. I do like... Okay. So, Orlando Bloom is not my... Orlando Bloom is not my favorite actor.
Mm-hmm.
I've made this clear. I don't hate him. But... I'm trying to figure out who, like, else in the... who else in the 2003 area could have played... I feel like IMDb has, like, a whole list of people that went up for Will. And it was very much a he's a hot topic because the rings were happening at the same time. But
should have cast John Rhys Davies, you cowards.
But
Salted pork.
But how do you feel about Will as a character? I'm gonna shove this onto you.
Oh man,
I mean, I think I like the idea of him bouncing back and forth between movies and having this motive of wanting to save Stellan Skarsgård makes him unpredictable. To where it's like you're not sure, it's unpredictable who he's gonna side with to make this happen.
He's definitely a character that's willing to do what he needs to accomplish his goal. He's very driven. He's not afraid to toe the line. He doesn't really show fear with Davy Jones or anything like that. I mean, I think there's a good character there.
And there is the moment when
he definitely could be a lot blander.
Yeah, there's the moment in the first movie when Barbossa figures out.
But that's what Brenton Thwaites did in the fifth one. Is that his name?
Thwaites.
Thwaites. That's Nightwing on Titans.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
But there's also the moment in the first movie where Barbossa figures out that he's the one in the bloodline, and so he says, you know, then I'll kill myself so you can't break the curse.
That's the kill the whelp scene.
Like
you said, lines.
Yeah. And I believe the first name drop of Davy Jones in the series. Interestingly enough. Because I don't know that we realized how literal Davy Jones was going to be in 2003.
Mm-hmm. I remember kind of thinking too, like, I didn't really like the idea of bringing in like the sea mythos and stuff. Like, I was fine just with the original characters.
Yeah, and I think that falls into that category also of like where they were just really trying to go as big as they could and bring in as much as they could. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like the other two movies suffered for it.
Because you had Davy Jones in 2 and 3, you had Blackbeard in 4. 5, I don't think Bardem's based on anybody. No. 5 freaking suckered me in because Javier Bardem looked amazing in the trailer.
Yeah, it was. Were you talking like performance or like the appearance of where it's like where he looks like he's constantly underwater?
Yeah, the way he looks and the fact that it's Javier Bardem.
And the way his hair moves. Javier Bardem, you have to fuck with his hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that it feels that it's like I do love the way like pieces of them are like missing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like, he had such a cool design. Like, he should have just come and been in the Curse of Black Pearl. He'd been fine.
Yeah, that would have. I mean, we would have been a bit overstuffed in characters, but it would have been, you know, he would have had a better storyline going on. But yeah, I need to. I wrote down like a lot of stuff that we haven't really touched on. I guess.
Just rapid fire.
Okay. I'll just throw stuff at you.
Okay.
Okay. Talking about action scenes that go on and on.
The wheel, you covered it.
In an adventure.
Even the chase at the beginning on the island goes for a while.
Yeah, that's where I was going next. You're good. Here we go. It's that brotherly connection going on. So tell me,
That's why we get the views.
In an adventure movie, action scenes do not necessarily have to have a purpose. Truth. Absolutely. I don't want to make it sound like I'm anti-action. I don't want to make it sound like I'm anti-adventure in an adventure movie. Sometimes scenes are just there for the sake of being exhilarating and fun and setting the moment. And so it's like
Hook has a lot of those.
Yeah, and it's like here's how adventure movies work. And sometimes if you don't do it right, they can be bloated like this.
Dude, Hook builds suspense with a food fight.
Pan the Man Catch This is a pretty epic moment.
Yeah.
But here's the thing here, is the idea is they have to get Jack. It could be very simple. They could just go get Jack. They could go find Jack hanging out somewhere. But instead, the movie has like 45 minutes of just getting Jack because of the situation he is in and the way that it escalates because he is stuck with this tribe and they have to rescue him. Where it seems like he's the leader, but in fact they are ready to eat him. And then it goes on and on and on. He gets the stick stuck to his back. He slapsticks around. He flips around. There's fruit.
A dog.
The dog. So, I am not against there having to be a big adventure scene just to do one simple objective. Yes, it would be kind of boring for an adventure movie to have a scene where they just go get Jack. Where it's like, hey Jack, we were looking for you and here you are, let's go do the movie. There is a fun nature in an adventure aspect that they have to go through something to get Jack.
Mm-hmm.
With that said...
It's like a side quest.
Yeah. With that said, how motherfucking long did this scene need to be? How ass-numbingly long did this scene need to be? Do you think it warrants it?
No.
It's as simple as that.
I think you could accomplish the same thing by just going to get him and he just doesn't want to leave the island.
Yeah. That could have been.
Because he was there for a reason.
Actually, maybe even find an excuse for them to have to fight Jack again.
Yeah.
Because the scene where he fights Will in the first one is so fun. That could be a case where you're like, oh, take something from the first one, but maybe make it a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it'll be him and Jack fighting again. Maybe have, like, more people involved, and you have a bigger set.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Like, maybe, like, and if you wanted to use the tribesmen and do some slapstick, just have Jack recruit them and he helps try to fight off the crew. Or they help try to fight off the crew.
Yeah,
and then maybe you take a couple of them with you on the ship and boom, you can develop a couple of new comedic characters.
Yeah, Pelagostos. Those are their names.
Yeah.
But it's...
Here I am, rewriting sequels again.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's like, there's... When you talk about, like, how these things get so bloated, how these things get so long, and the details are right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know... Sometimes I'm, like, pro cutting a movie down. Sometimes I'm against cutting a movie down.
Mm-hmm.
If it serves its purpose enough. But like I said, I get why the scene needs to be here, even if it seems pointless in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a popular criticism nowadays is the fact that the car chase in the Batman was for no reason. And it's like, even if that's true, that scene is the peak of that movie. It's the best
Mm-hmm.
scene of that movie to me.
Mm-hmm.
And even something like that is not going to change my opinion because it served its purpose to bring the action that the movie promises and the story promises.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you could have that in portions of what happens here, but what is up with this second and third movie of making everything feel so fucking long?
Here, I know how you can get all your things accomplished that you want to do and cut down on the time of the scene. So, they show up, they try to get Jack to go with them, he doesn't want to go, so they have to fight. But before the fight, if you really want to make a cannibalism joke, just have one of them whip out a fork as a weapon and just have Jack say something like, I told you don't eat me. And then you've addressed it.
It's like him having the equivalent of bricked Hamlin.
Yeah.
I could see something like that.
I mean, write it better, but give Jack a funnier line and a funnier way to deliver it. But, I mean, wouldn't it be kind of a comedic situation to see Jack Sparrow tell somebody, I told you not to eat me in his Jack Sparrow way?
Yeah, it's like, you were just kind of doing the basic line. It's like, now you got to imagine Depp delivering that line as Jack.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole other monster.
Yeah.
But
you could make your cannibalism joke without eating up 10 minutes of running around with a stick of fruit. You can have a fight scene that is a callback to the first one. Like you said, add an element to it, which could be the Pelagostos help fight. And, you know, a couple of the Pelagostos decide to remain loyal to Jack. Boom, they go on the ship. You got 2 new fun characters you can develop. Maybe you can have them come into a scene with Pintel and Rigetti to see who's more ridiculous for 2 minutes.
Yeah. I lose track, like I said, they all just blend together. Mm-hmm. Are the rolling cages in this same scene?
Yeah.
what the fuck is this movie and rolling things? So, and yeah, talking about bringing in, you know, like other comedy relief characters like Pentel and Rigotti, how do you feel about them? To my understanding, they were intended to be like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of these movies.
I'd heard that somewhere too.
That makes sense. Do you think there's ever too much of them, or do you think they're just about right?
I feel like they start to wear a little thin in the third one.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what's up with Rigetti getting progressively smarter as the series goes on. It's kind of a funny running joke, but I'm trying to figure out where it comes from too. And I was trying to imagine things. Was Pentel getting dumber while Rigetti was getting smarter?
Maybe.
I don't know. And those guys are really good together too. The guy from, I can never remember his name. He's the guy. He was in a couple episodes of Seinfeld though.
Yeah, he's been in some other things too.
And Mackenzie Crook, I believe, was he the Dwight of the UK office?
Yes.
I can remember the character. Gareth, was that the character?
I think so. Yeah.
And so it's fun to see them here, kind of seemingly randomly. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too, is it's like, see where they are now, and think about the first time, one of the first times we see them. Remember the moment when Pentel shows up when they're taking Elizabeth from the house, and the guy, that poor butler, whoever he is, that poor helper, just kind of waltz into the door, minding his own business, like, well, just doing my job, this is what I've been doing, and it's like, this guy, you know, how many loved ones has he probably had in his life, and like, how much trouble did he have to go through to get this job? Was it a whole rise in the ranks? Was this whole sort of thing? What is this guy's life? He must have so many things. And he's walking along, just doing my job. Elizabeth's back here going, no, don't answer the door. For some reason he can't hear. Maybe the poor man is deaf. We don't know. He opens the door and gets shot directly in the face by this character that will be comedic and happy and silly for the entire rest of the series.
He comes off very threatening in the first couple scenes.
When is the fucking crack through the closet?
Yeah.
When he says, hello, Poppet. That's pretty terrible. I remember seeing that in the theater and thinking, this dude's terrifying. He's actually not. He may have just blown a dude's face off and done something super creepy by peeking in and catching her.
But he's going to be wearing a dress by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a lackey.
Yeah, it was this movie. They were wearing dresses, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We didn't even reach a second movie. Because this isn't the last time they were in dresses, is it? I don't remember.
No, because you could use them to send a powerful message to say, like, this is how cold-blooded our fucking lackeys are.
Mm-hmm. And then somewhere along the way, even before the movie was even over, but like we were saying, there's not much in Curse of Black Pearl that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And I think it does get to me more in the sequels. But, yeah, because Rigetti always has the eye joke, regardless of anything else. Mm-hmm. And maybe that joke makes him seem dumber than he actually is, and that's why it seems like he seems to get weirdly smarter as the series goes on. But I'm trying to think of other things. Like another example of a scene that may not be necessary, but we're doing an adventure movie. Best amp up the mundane, right? The Norrington scene in the second movie that results in a bar fight. Mm-hmm. And you think it's going to be one of those cases where, like, in a lot of cases, a bar fight will start, and then our main characters will leave the room. Mm-hmm. And then the bar fight will just be happening in the background while an actual scene is happening. This is Dead Man's Chest we're talking about. We're going to see every single motherfucking detail of this bar fight. That's really not serving a whole lot of a purpose. Is there a scene in this series that you think stands out as not very necessary, but the perfect example of the adventure that the movie's trying to get across, and is necessary in that sense, even if not for the story? And complete, not like if you cut it down, it would be. I mean, like intact as it is in the movie. Is there a scene like that works outside of Curse of the Black Pearl?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay. There's the scenes we were talking about, like the tribe, mm-hmm. where you have something that would be mundane, where they just go get Jack. Mm-hmm. But you got to amplify that because it's an adventure movie, so you make it an adventure scene by having the chase scene. Mm-hmm. But that's clearly way too much. Like, you get the idea of why it's an adventure scene, because it's an adventure movie, and you don't want the scene to be mundane. You don't want the task to be mundane. So you make it a big adventure scene. Thus making it not completely pointless, because it's serving the purpose of bringing the adventure to the adventure movie, where every mundane task is going to be something big and grand and potentially life-threatening. But these movies always fuck it up because these scenes are too bloated and take the adventure out of them and make what could be a fun 10-minute action scene into a nearly 45-minute one.
I don't think that happens too much when Jack's trying to get away from Richard Griffiths in On Stranger Tides.
See? You see? I have compliments to give on Stranger Tides. That scene is one of them. and I did not know he was going to say that. I was really hoping you would find a scene in Dead Man's Tesseract World's End to prove my point. But where did you go? Where did you go?
On Stranger Tides.
Please, people, continue to shit on Stranger Tides for no reason. By all means.
On Stranger Tides has something else going for it that I'm sure is on your list.
No Will and Elizabeth.
No, I was going to say Ian McShane.
Yes, as well. Let's talk about On Stranger Tides. Do you have anything to say, first of all?
When I rewatched it, it was better than I remember.
Right? Like, I seriously feel so alone in this.
I mean, I wouldn't consider it great by any stretch, but...
You wouldn't consider it second best, either. Oh my god. Am I not as alone as I think?
I don't know.
Well, as far as I was talking about, a really big factor is something I've already mentioned, which is it going back to what feels like the action scale of the first movie and not trying to be as big and bloated as possible. And the fact that it's kind of taking elements out. Like, I'm sure I know the reason, or I have an idea of the reason people hate On Stranger Tides that are fans of the series. And it's especially because they love Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. I'm sure they hate a Pirates movie that doesn't have Will and Elizabeth in it. I'm sure they hate a Pirates movie that doesn't have the Black Pearl in it, that we learn unceremoniously sunk in between movies. I'm sure they hate that Barbossa essentially walks into the movie a different character. He suddenly has one leg now. He's significantly older looking, has a different sort of position. And we have a new villain with Ian McShane, who I could potentially see being underwhelming, and there might be people that don't like the idea of Jack having an equal, as far as having like a female counterpart to bounce off of, the way that everybody had Keira Knightley at one point. Because, another thing I want to talk about with Knightley, we talked about Bloom, we didn't talk about Knightley. Honestly, Keira Knightley is a great actress. If anybody hasn't seen Laggies or Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, you will get amazing peak Keira Knightley, to me. Even throw Atonement in there. She really is amazing.
I remember her being good in A Dangerous Method, too.
Yeah. And we haven't even mentioned her 2 Oscar nominations. Like, she definitely is a very, very good actress. But around the time we got to At World's End is when I kind of started to feel like I wasn't sure if she had the presence for the... Like, when we get to the point where you could say, it's bad writing that she eventually becomes captain and becomes this, big figure amongst these other pirates. And it's like, I don't think that's a laughable idea in writing. I think it feels laughable because Keira Knightley doesn't have that kind of presence. Where she doesn't have the strength to feel like that she's, enough to almost intimidate all the other pirate lords and stuff like that, and actually take on this position. And yeah, they do laugh at her and make jokes about it when she kind of first becomes like the captain of sorts, and then even higher than that. But I don't think her presence can carry that kind of role. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you get the same vibe?
Yeah.
So by the time we get to At World's End's Elizabeth, I don't necessarily miss her. And I feel like Penelope Cruz brings something kind of new, and something that has, something else to bounce off of, especially with Jack not really having an equal up to this point. where it's like it's really weird in Dead Men Tell No Tales when he's like suddenly really horny for Elizabeth. When Brenton Thwaites gets him behind the bars, and then he's like, hey, how's your mom? Does she talk about me? And it's like, he starts like getting horny talking about her. It's like that was the whole opposite of what their relationship was.
I thought he was just doing it to fuck with him.
And I think it's because they just completely fucked Jack up by Dead Men Tell No Tales. They just didn't care about that character anymore. And obviously, Deb was going through all his trouble at that time too. But yeah, there was the whole thing of, it never would have worked between us. It was like the whole final punchline of the first movie. And the fact that when she almost offered to kiss him at the end, and his response was like, once was enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like now he's, suddenly horny for her. And it's like, I feel like giving Jack an equal in that sense that Will had, or all these other people had to play off of in the way that Elizabeth did, where there is like a flirty nature to it, but she also is serving her purpose in her own way. Which, like I said, I feel like they lost track of with Elizabeth because I don't know that Knightley could handle. I don't want to put it all on Knightley, and I was saying it wasn't completely writing. There is some shit writing going on there as well, But
Do you think it's less that Knightley doesn't have that presence and they just didn't give that character the ability to have that presence?
That could be also because they do give her a big arc when she essentially kills Jack in this, and does it in this very deceptive way that fractures her story for the rest of her storyline for most of it. But yeah, I guess I don't know. Those scenes just don't work for me when they like give her power and we're supposed to be kind of won over by that, because at first it's supposed to be like, oh, how laughable with all the other characters, but then we're supposed to take it seriously. It's like when the movie told us straight up front, you can't take it seriously. And it's like it couldn't really have any conviction one way or the other with that. But I do kind of love what he and Penelope Cruz have throughout this movie. It may be a little forced at times, and it may not be perfect. I mean, they already have some sort of chemistry coming from Blow. And you can see that some of that, like, there's some kind of past between them, and you do feel that enough to me. If there's only one problem to me, it's the fact that On Stranger Tides is really, really bad at fake-outs. Mm-hmm. Like, when it starts, and we're in the court, and everybody's really excited about the execution. Just a detour really quick. All my bashing about World's End, at World's End does have an amazing opening scene with the execution, the mass executions, and the kids singing, and then they all sing. At World's End has an amazing opening. I'll just throw that out there. But so anyway, you get to On Stranger Tides, everybody's really psyched about this execution, and we think it's going to be Jack, and so a guy is brought out with a bag on his head. As soon as a guy is brought out with a bag on his head, your first response is, it's not him. It's just not. Mm-hmm. I've seen a movie in my life. I've seen a fake out in my life. It's not him. It's more of a fake out that he ends up being the judge than the fact that he's not the guy under the bag.
Mm-hmm. If I remember right, it was Gibbs.
Yes. And then there's another fake out where
they're not even built the same way.
Yeah, what the fuck? That was not thought out at all. But then there's the second fake out where it's like there's an imposter Jack Sparrow going around, and there's an imposter you, and then like finally we're seeing, oh no, an imposter Jack. As soon as that silhouette steps out, Penelope Cruz. They have a whole fight before that's revealed, but it's like, no, that's her. I get it. And honestly, it is interesting how much Penelope Cruz can pull off a female Jack Sparrow. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't even really have to shout her in silhouette. You could just have been that's a reveal of her, and she's just dressed as Jack. That would have been a nice reveal, actually. Mm-hmm. But no, that honestly doesn't even piss me off that much. Like, you know how like I got so pissed off at the second and third movie, like, just about any detail is gonna like make me angrier, but yeah, On Stranger Tides, I don't know, I just feel like it has a chill vibe about it, where it's not trying to be the biggest fucking thing ever, and it helps. Mm-hmm. It helps that it's just chilling the fuck out. And it's like, that's really what these movies needed. And it's like, it's amazing how much hate this movie gets. I don't know that I've seen a comment lately in the past number of years where somebody didn't bring up On Stranger Tides and say, like, that fucking sucks. And they're always usually saying, the first two are amazing. And it's like, I don't trust fucking anybody that says Dead Man's Chest and At World's End are amazing. Maybe in certain aspects a little bit. If they're talking about Davy Jones playing the organ or something.
You always go back to Davy Jones and the organ.
I mean, that's all they got. Nearly 6 hours between 2 movies. At least we got Davy Jones playing the organ. How long is that scene? 10 seconds?
There is a visual I like that they use. I think it might be the end of the second one. It's when they're all on land to make that deal, and Davy Jones can't stand on land, so he's literally just standing in a bucket of water. That visual gets me. Especially when we get like the sweeping shot of it, and you can see the bucket.
Yeah, there is. Like, that's kind of his moment, like the iconic Jack moment we were talking about at the beginning with the sinking boat. So, he gets kind of one of those. There is, talking about the comedy in these movies, there is a scene in On Stranger Tides.
Why didn't Orlando Bloom try that? To be with Elizabeth Moore, just stand in a bucket?
Because Elizabeth was driving him insane at this point. They were driving each other. No, maybe he said, like, oh, hey, y'all use the bucket. She says, nah, we'll just wait 10 years. I think we both need it. You know? But, I did the whole kissing Jack thing. You did the whole turning on us to save Stellan Skarsgård thing. Maybe we're not the greatest couple. But it's, whatever. Let's get married in a battle zone. With everyone dying around us. But then again, nobody stays dead in these movies, so what the fuck's it matter anyway?
Bomb guy stayed dead. I don't remember him coming back.
No, I don't believe he did either.
He should have been the reveal of somebody getting executed. He's not built like Jack either, but it would have been fun. Or even like maybe like is Pintle the short one?
Yes.
Rigetti.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Actually, I'm almost surprised they didn't go with that. Because Pinto and Rigetti are in... No, they're not in this either, are they? Wow, a lot of people got shut up on Stranger Times. No wonder people are pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one scene, like you talk about the comedy working, there's one scene on Stranger Tides that makes me laugh so hard every time, and it gets me every time. Do you remember a scene on Stranger Tides being hilarious?
You're going to have to refresh my memory.
It involves, there's a running thing involving this voodoo doll of Jack. And there's a point in time where I believe Blackbeard just throws it over a waterfall. And Jack is under the impression that something horrible is going to happen to him because this voodoo doll went over a waterfall. So the whole time the doll's falling over the waterfall, Jack is just screaming. And it's really dramatic until we realize that nothing's going to happen. And his screaming just dies off. That scene kills me. I love that. And I also kind of like the way they bring in the mermaids isn't bad. And it's like, actually, it's to the point even where we bring Stephen Graham into the series with this movie. And he's in Dead Tales as well. And there's not the main mermaid, but though she's very nice too. But the first mermaid, the one that lures Stephen Graham and almost eats him. And it's like the look of her when she's like on the side of the boat, and like her hair is wet and all that, and she's a mermaid. And it's like, the thing about Stephen Graham's character here is he knows the dangers of the mermaids. He knows that if he gets sucked in, he's going to get eaten and killed. But it's like when you see this actress, whoever that is, it's like, I get it. It's like the perfect casting of this person I'm pretty sure is going to eat me, but maybe it'd be worth it. Maybe it'd be worth it just to see what happens. Like maybe she'll turn around. And it's like the idea of having like that siren nature of luring you in and pulling you in.
And then she turns around and it's like Large Marge.
Yeah.
Or like Beetlejuice's short little face that he does.
Or a Mrs. Massey even. It's like Mrs. Massey was like her own kind of siren from The Shining. So, but yeah, there's a lot of, and like we were talking about the adventure, how like I said, the fact that it's so scaled down from 2 and 3, that I actually prefer that. The Judi Dench cameo is so wonderfully random, and I love the sort of double meaning to her line there when he like leans in, and he acts like he's gonna like kiss her neck or something, but he's taking her earring, and after he leans in and then leaves, her response is that it? And she's talking about Jack and whatever he was doing, and of course we as an audience are saying that about Judi Dench's screen time. It's perfect, and of course Rob Marshall took over. Probably another reason people hate this movie is that it's not Verbinski, and you can kind of get the sense that it's not Verbinski now. But I love Marshall as a director, for the most part. And not only is he very eclectic, but he can really just do this thing about going really big without going too big, that he really seems to master. And I can get people saying that that's like going middle ground. Like people would prefer a Verbinski that's just going to say, you know what, let's just throw everything in. And it's like, I can get that and I can admire that. But like I said, the other two movies are so exhausting. Just seeing this movie just feels like such a breath of fresh air. And it's, maybe people hate that. But
I feel like it doesn't have to be that big either because it's the fucking 1700s.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's really only so much you can do. Like we were talking about, like, it's not even just the Flying Dutchman scenes. Like, everything in those two movies felt like they had to be huge. Mm-hmm. And there's the whole thing with, Jack being, at World's End. And
wasn't Dead Man's Chest at one point in time the most expensive movie ever made?
That would not surprise me at all.
I want to say that when it came out at the time, it was.
That makes sense. But best way imagining the two of them together, 'cause I'm assuming they shot back to back. Probably. They would have to, with how massive the productions are and only coming out a year apart. But yeah, then you have the whole thing where there's a whole bunch of Jacks going on. Just when Jack is becoming a played-out character, they multiplied him. And it's like, this is you get the sense that obviously Johnny Depp loves this character, but it's not hard to see how he could get burnt out. Mm-hmm. And that's where I could, like, there was his real life troubles obviously, but then by the time we get to Dead Man Tell No Tales, you can really tell, like, the passion is really dying down.
It's more of a phone in.
Yeah, and it's like this it's almost like an obligation.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like he was under contract.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like wasn't there an alternate ending to Birdman? I think one that wasn't shot, where it was the whole thing about Birdman was that Michael Keaton was getting away from Batman, and it was this franchise role that basically ate up his artistic side and made him he was desperate to break out of it, and that's essentially what Birdman's about. And there was an alternate ending to Birdman that was never shot, where after it's implied that Keaton dies in Birdman, a new voice, because you know how there's the voice of Keaton and then the voice of Birdman. Mm-hmm. There's an internal voice that sounds like Jack Sparrow, and the camera pans over, and then Johnny Depp is going through the same crisis. Was the original ending to Birdman. Huh. I'm pretty sure it's something, I might have butchered that a little bit, but it's something along the lines of that was the planned idea. And that's, you get that, like, you can feel that. Mm-hmm. But
and he did it 5 times. Keaton only did Batman twice.
Yeah.
And it's the way things are going. It might freaking stay that way.
Yeah. And of course, Depp would do it for good causes, like when he'd show up at the parks and do it, and when he'd go to children's hospitals and stuff. Yeah. It's like, so it's clearly a special character, but it's like, as far as like having to go to work and do this and learn the shitty dialogue, learn the shitty jokes, and it's like, you can tell a lot of it's probably half-assed improv anyway. Mm-hmm. And like, not even his best takes. Or like, even he would watch it and be like, why'd you use that take? I was just dicking off. And that's not even a good take. But that's what happens. But how do you... We talked about Bardem a little bit. How do you feel about Dead Man Tell No Tales in general?
I remember being very bored with it.
Yeah.
And it upset me that I was so bored with it. Because I feel like they had a great villain that went to waste.
Yeah, and I gotta say this again. I know fans of this series are long gone from this video by now. Mm-hmm. They've thrown their computers or phones out the window. But I hate to seem like I keep hating on Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, but I mean, same thing with On Stranger Tides. When you could look at the second and third movie, Dead Man Tell No Tales doesn't feel that big, and the plot feels pretty simple. It's basically just Bardem wanting revenge, really, isn't it, at the end of the day? I mean, obviously there's a lot of complicated aspects, and Barbossa has to have a daughter and bullshit. But because we just got to continue to piss on the character of Barbossa, apparently.
It's like when Rey was Palpatine's grandchild.
Yep. very similar actually. But the thing here is that it still doesn't feel as bloated. It's the shortest one. 2 hours and 9 minutes. That is a short film compared to everything else in this series. And honestly, for that, I'm grateful. And like for that it feels downplayed.
That's like when everybody was surprised that Doctor Strange 2 was like 2 hours.
Yeah. And Love and Thunder for worse, but still. And it's like you can tell the Australian setting now because like Bruce Spence is here and David Wenham's here, and it's like I love when you can tell an Australian production by the actors that are in it because it's usually the same group. Usually you see them in Lorman movies, but or Mad Max movies, but yeah, I pretty much do come away from Dead Man Tell No Tales with not a lot of feeling at all, but like I said, it almost feels relaxing. If you've been marathoning them.
Bardem even has a cool backstory.
Yeah.
Of why he looks that way.
Yeah, and the way they shoot that scene is actually very well done. D.H. Jack is a little weird. And I'm not usually that critical about that kind of thing, but D.H. Jack looks a little odd.
Well, I mean, Civil War hadn't happened yet. Or had it?
Yeah, it had been the year before. This was 2017. Civil War was 2016. So there's no excuse. So I wrote some stuff down here about Pirates 5. I guess I want to go through and just like pick up anything that I happened to write down that we did go through. I think we got through most of it. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. But was there anything else kind of specific about the fifth one that stands out to you? I was looking at the wrong ones.
It's funny you say the action's scaled down because it also seems like it's very over the top as far as what was it? Is Poseidon's trident was what they were looking for?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
I love how you say that like I think that's what it was because it just doesn't matter that much. It's just a MacGuffin plot. That's all it is. We do have some action scenes here, like the spinning guillotine is kind of its own thing, where it's getting close to him and then it goes farther away as it spins and comes back and forth. That's kind of fun. And like I said, they always want to incorporate spinning things, especially Dead Man's Chest for some reason. But you know, every now and then they can still find the fun, but there is always something that's just going to really, really drag it. Like the makeshift wedding scene on the beach, where it's like, you're going to marry my sister or whatever. I love that Barbossa just shows up and shoots that guy, by the way. It's like, oh, you're going to debt to this guy, you're going to have to marry this person, we'll just end this now. And it's like, if only Barbossa was here to end all the conflicts in this movie that quickly. Or this whole series, really, that quickly.
The whole series would be as long as at World's End.
Oh my god. And like we were talking about, the idea of Jack being like especially bumbling here.
I have to go back and point out something in Barbossa in the first one that I love that we didn't talk about, and then we can go right back where we were. I love when Jack first shoots him in his death scene. First, he's just like, really?
he just thought he fucked up. He fucked up with the most confident look of any person that's ever fucked up. Which is probably something Jack Sparrow would do.
Which I think it's the contrast that makes it work, because like you said, Jack is so triumphant standing there, and Barbossa's just like...
Yeah, I really that's the thing that keeps coming back to in this series is every time we get to a new movie, it's like, man, I love the first movie. But yeah, it feels like Jack is especially bumming in this one. But like we were saying, that does also feel like kind of an art imitating life kind of thing, because of where Depp was with his alcoholism at this point and stuff like that.
I feel like the video gets so dark whenever we bring up Johnny Depp's personal demons.
Yeah, like I'm trying to somewhat dance around it, but also make sure it's like this was going on at that time, and we remember like hearing about all of the times like the set was held up and stuff like that, and it made it sound like the movie was going to be this. Well, it's kind of a disaster in its own way, but yeah. But what's up with all the innuendos in the fifth movie? I mean, there's like flirty jokes throughout the series, but I mean, this one is full of dick and ball and whore jokes. Like the whole horologist thing.
It's like an Austin Powers movie.
Yeah, there's the thing where there's a scene just has no other purpose than Karina goes into a building and touches the what is it, like the Herschel telescope or whatever, and the guy, in the weirdest way to say this possible, the weirdest way to put these words together just to make this joke, a woman has never touched my Herschel before. Like what? And it's the idea of them talking about Barbossa having 18-pound balls, and Jack saying they're talking about cannonballs, but then Jack says like, "Oh, no wonder he walks funny." He's like, "No, he walks funny because he has one fucking leg. You know this, Jack." But whatever. And then there is one moment that I love that's funnier than any of the dick and ball innuendos. And Brenton Thwaites, who I have criticized so many times in the past for not being a good actor. This movie was a prime example. A number of movies like Oculus, I think that's the one he was in, right? Where there was a while there where he was not a good actor, but he has one delivery here that is so perfectly hilarious. That, like I said, is better than any of the innuendos they try to do and the hidden jokes they try to do. It's the moment when Karina lifts up her dress a little bit and then she jumps in the water. And the way he so purely, so genuinely turns to, I think, Jack and says, "I saw her ankles." And it's like that line was delivered so genuinely. And I love that. And that almost kind of feels like a callback to the corset jokes from the first movie, but completely indirectly. Not even it feels like it's in the same vein and kind of telling the same joke of the way things used to be and the way women had to dress and for the reasons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But added this whole other. I love the delivery of that. There are some shots in. I guess there's some shots in all of these that I love. If you want to point out some stuff like in At World's End, like when they do the whole, when they have to go under and turn over, and we get the whole turning over shot where everything goes upside down. That's kind of cool. And I love the shot in Dead Men Tell No Tales when we see the pearl in the glass bottle, and then the glass bottle's lined up with the actual ocean, and it looks like it's sailing again. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. It's the series finds ways to have those individual moments, but they can trick you into thinking the rest of the movie has that magic, and the rest of the series has that magic, when a lot of it is just tedious action scenes and boring shit. And that's the thing too, is when I'm watching, I feel like we can't win, because there's a lot of moments where it's when action goes on and on and on, it's I'm really bored with this. And then when you have scenes when they're trying to move the plot forward and it's just people in a room talking, you're also I'm really bored with this. But the thing is because I never really feel in scenes like that, in scenes that are just dialogue and rooms, even in scenes where you're seeing characters interact that you haven't really seen interact before that are major characters, like when Jack and Beckett have a scene together. And it's you think it should be this big thing, and the dialogue should be on fire, and it should be this big thing. And it feels like most of those scenes are just dialogue running the story in circles, just talking about stuff we already know, and conflicts we already know, objectives we already know.
So it's exposition.
Yeah, they're just further establishing things they've already done exposition for. It's double, sometimes triple exposition. And that's just as tiring as the action scenes. And that's what we get a lot of throughout this. That's what I feel like a large portion of all 5 of these movies are when you put them all together and look at them as one big picture. So I was really hoping it didn't sound like I was shitting on these movies as much as that might sound like, and I was kind of hoping you'd be able to help pick it up, because I remember there was a time where you used to like these movies a lot more than I did. At least it seemed that way. Mm-hmm. Are they... How do you see them now versus how you saw them in the past?
I think theatrical helped too with the first 3, because it helped with that massiveness. There was a lot to look at, a lot to see. But then when I rewatched it recently, even on the big TV over here, it was just I yawned through it. I would get on my phone. It just wouldn't hold my attention.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty much waiting oh, I remember this was really cool, and then I'd kind of wait for it, and it would pass, and I'd be oh, what's the next cool thing I have to look forward to?
you know, and it's yeah. But I guess it's another thing like my opinion of period movies in general, particularly like period dramas and costume dramas, where I get so bored with them and I wonder how anybody could take to them. But then like you see these people, these massive fan bases that love this stuff just for like because that's just their jam.
Mm-hmm.
Like just seeing people in the costumes on the giant sets, speaking in the accents and doing all that. Sometimes people just love that in general. So it's like if you any element of this movie could be something that somebody loves, even if the scene is dull. And I wish I could see it for that, but that's I guess
period dramas have never been your thing though.
The occasional one every now and then. But
It's like me with westerns.
Oh, that's how you feel about westerns?
I can't get into them as much. There's a few that I do enjoy, like the True Grit remake. Unforgiven's really good.
310 to Yuma remake.
310 to Yuma is amazing. Outlaw Josie Wales was good.
But yeah, so maybe that's where I can see because the reason I'm saying that now is because what I was initially going to say was I wonder if people just remember those somewhat high points, and every other time they're spacing out or looking at a phone or multitasking or whatever, and they only remember the moments that stand out when those are few. There's so much dead, whether it be action or dialogue or whatever, there's so much dead air in these movies.
And so much changes too. Like I would look down at my phone for 10 minutes, come back, and I'm lost. By the way, would you consider Back to the Future 3 a Western?
Yes.
Okay, put that on the list too.
I don't know what else I wanted to... Was there anything else kind of in general you had in mind to mention?
Not really.
I was trying to find out, like, some good things to say about the second and third movie since I kind of bashed them so much.
You already mentioned the organ.
Yeah. I like the idea of Jack having to pay Tia Dalma with an undead monkey. Like using him as currency. It's a funny thought. What else do we have here? The character designs. There's the guy with the shell head. And I love the moment where like his shell head becomes detached and the reveal that there's like a whole fucking body in there. Like that's pretty wild. I do like that. The character designs in general is something that's really kind of consistent throughout.
I thought the concept was kind of neat that like the longer you're on the Dutchman, you start to literally become part of the ship.
Yeah. And I do have to say, I kind of wish I'd said this earlier, because like I said, people are probably long gone at this point and very angry. But the action is very, very tedious and exhausting and repetitive, especially in Dead Man's Chest. With that said, the Kraken climax is pretty cool. Just in general, the whole Kraken scene.
That's another thing that, like, we were robbed of the chance for them to get rid of the Kraken because he was just ceremoniously dumped off screen. Like, it was, like, addressed in one line. I think Beckett told Davy Jones something like, well, I had your beast destroyed or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, could you imagine, like, if they were in that storm climax while trying to fight the Kraken in a storm?
Oh my god. It would have been too much. Seriously, I think I would have criticized it for that.
What if the Kraken would have made the action scene quicker?
Yeah, potentially. I was going to give more props to Davy Jones as well. Because I said, you really loved Davy Jones back in the day. I love the moment when he looks through the telescope and sees him, and then he pulls his telescope and he's fucking there. That's pretty great.
That might have been a trailer moment.
That wouldn't surprise me. And then there's the moment where like the ship dives and we're seeing it from like his perspective, like over his shoulder. That's very cool. And like the thing I wrote down about the organ was the scene is so good that everything else is so bland by comparison. Which could be, I think I was saying that about the Davy Jones scenes in general. So that's probably a problem that has like the Davy Jones scenes are almost too good for the movie, and then the movie is at fault for that. And I thought there were a lot of lazy callbacks, because, like I said, there were some callbacks that are okay and do kind of work. But then there is a moment where Jonathan Pryce is in the jail, and he does, like, 3 callbacks in a row. There's the moment where he says, he's like the dog with the keys was a big thing in the first movie. So just like randomly, he's like, "Where's that dog with the keys?" And then pretty much right after this, he goes to like lean on a candle and breaks it, and that's obviously the callback to the first scene. I wanted to single out that scene also, about how it surprised me when we saw the first movie in the theater, how much of it was going to be a comedy. And what really set that off was you had this very eerie opening. You have the umbrella, you see the pearl in the distance, and then Elizabeth wakes up from a nightmare, and then it's like, oh, okay, we've got to get you going to this place. And it's like, oh, this really set an energy. There's a lot going on here. And then we get this very quiet scene of Will just standing in the living room or whatever it is, and he goes to adjust that candle and just breaks it off. And it's like, that's the moment where it's like, I remember being like, that was so jarring because it was so funny. And it's still so funny. Like I said, I remember though, we went into the movie and I was expecting, I'm like 13 years old, and I'm expecting this gigantic action movie. And it's not really occurred to me by now that a lot of action blockbusters like have a lot of comedy, and that's part of their identity. And the fact that this moment, like 10 minutes into this movie that had such a sinister opening, has a moment in it that's so funny, and that was like a telling point of how funny the movie was going to be throughout. It's like I said, when Jack's introduced, like, he's just all comedy all the time. Even when he's like, "That's interesting," is another one of those almost iconic lines you could say he has. That's an iconic shot in itself also, where the guy's arm comes in and grabs him and it turns into bone. That's incredible. I love the first movie. I really love the first movie. And just that whole scene when they're on the boat with her, and Elizabeth's seeing, like, you know, everything for the first time when the moon comes out. And Barbossa's lines of, like, you know, "You better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Swan, you're in one." That's a really cool line. There's another really, his "Welcome to the Black Pearl" just in general line is very cool as well. Man, I miss that Barbossa. But, I think that was pretty much, we talked about how Beckett's kind of an underwhelming villain. Mercer. Fucking Mercer's probably more threatening than Beckett is, isn't he? And
yeah.
I do like Mercer does have a nice comeuppance, though. Beckett's death is so dramatic. So, I mean, to their credit, cinematic, but I mean, it's still fucking Beckett. And it's like, I much prefer the Davy Jones's tentacles fucking up Mercer's head.
Yeah, and then Davy Jones's demise, he literally just, like, his heart gets stabbed, he falls in the water.
So anticlimactic, is it not? Okay, so that's not just me. Fuck. And fucking Beckett gets the most cinematic death of all time. You know who else was really underutilized to the point that we never mentioned him?
Jonathan Pryce?
No.
Oh.
Giant fact.
Oh.
Yeah.
He was all over the previews.
Oh yeah. What is it? 3 scenes? 2 scenes?
Yeah, including a death scene.
Jesus. And I struggle to remember what Southang's purpose was. I'm shocked I remember his name.
Him and Jack didn't even get a scene together.
Did they not? Doesn't surprise me.
I don't think they did.
No, because he's in the opening scene. That's where Barbossa and Elizabeth are. And then his death scene's also an Elizabeth scene. Whatever. Fuck it. There's a super fan of the series here that's really pissed off, and it's like, dude, I can give you Southang's whole backstory. I'm sure you can, dude. And I'm very happy for you. I really, really am. It's great. I really appreciate people who can just really appreciate things. It's great. It's fantastic. People who just hate things constantly, like I'm doing with Demian's Chest and at World's End, it does grow very, very tiresome, especially on the internet, especially on YouTube. And I'm sorry to be a part of that, but I also want to be real with you. So I don't really know what else. Did I have anything here for Pirates 3? Yeah, I like the idea of the scene where they all point their guns at each other, and then like they all kind of stop and laugh. Like it's like, and then they do it again. And then the final payoff of this is that none of the guns fire because the powder's wet. It's like, we could have lost all of our main characters in that scene. Oh man, that World's End would have been the best movie ever if that happened.
All the fantastical things that happen in these movies, and it ends on a fucking Mexican standoff. Yeah.
And it's like, they kind of tried that in the Norrington scene, in the fight scene, but then that's where the fucking wheel came in and ruined my life. I love when...
You talked about how Norrington was unpredictable. What do you think of him as a character, like his arc?
Yeah, I actually like his arc in just the first movie alone.
Mm-hmm.
When he's like, you know what, go ahead. Like, it's almost like when he's a villain in the second movie, it's kind of a downer, because it's like, well, dude, he had a whole arc in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like when he kind of comes back, and the fact that he basically goes into full pirate mode does feel like a complete sort of full circle kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that when he finally dies, he's a good guy again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's... Yeah, he's a much more interesting character than the movie's willing to give him time to show. But another thing I was going to say was I love when Jack and Barbossa are reunited after Jack is resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
And the exchange goes... Remember, big moment from the first movie where Jack kills Barbossa. And the first interaction they have, after they're both resurrected, is Barbossa saying, "You shot me," and Jack saying, "No, I didn't." And it's like that's the kind of stuff that's simple enough that it's easy to get behind. I remember at first feeling like it was a very anticlimactic way to kill off a major character, but it's grown on me the way they show Jonathan Pryce's death.
Mm-hmm.
Where it happened, where we see it after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
and it's as he's crossing over. That's actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Come to think of it, so that's something about A World's End that's kind of grown on me over time.
What amazes me about these movies is, you said the shortest one's 209, right?
Yep.
How many? So in all these hours of movies, it's crazy how much business we took care of off screen.
Yeah. Off screen in the movies and between movies.
Yeah.
It's like there's whole other movies going on. Probably better ones. Another quote that I wrote down here of Jack is, "I once sailed with a guy who lost both arms and part of his eye. What do you call him? Larry." It's like the stupidest fucking jokes end up working on me. And it's that depth delivery. Like, you wonder why actors make so much money. At least a part of it is the fact that you got to deliver these lines in that certain way. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. And Deb, as this character, is just inherently... this character's like inherently alive in him in one way or another, regardless of how much burnout he might have eventually gotten to by the time the fifth movie came around. Maybe even by the fourth movie came around, but... Yeah. So, I don't... Is that... I think I might have finally run out of notes. At least everything that I feel the need to mention. So... Anything else to add? This was all over the damn place, as we expected it to be. So, yeah. So overall, I love the first movie, and I can't express that enough. I think On Stranger Tides is wildly underrated. I think Dead Man's Chest and A World's End are wildly overrated, and Dead Man's Tell No Tales is probably about where it belongs. Where people think... I think it's... When it started off, I think everybody hated it, and I remember hating it when it came out, because there's another review on this channel where I talk about it, where I can't even remember anything that I said, but I remember that I did not like it at all. But now it almost feels like harmless enough that it's just like, it exists and it's not that great.
I remember your initial reaction when I saw you. I was like, Pirates 5, and you just went... That was all you did. I was like, oh.
Alright, so, this is gonna be a fun editing process. So, where I might, I'll like trim out some of our silences and where we had to like stop and think, and I'll probably put like representing like pictures and shit up, and all that fun stuff to kind of liven up the proceedings a little bit. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so do you have a particular ranking of them?
One. Large gap. 2, 4, 3, 5.
Okay.
The wheel lasts a while, but I like the wheel.
You like the wheel?
I like the wheel.
Wow, what a twist!
I will admit, it goes on long, but I like the wheel. I think it's ridiculous nonsense that goes on for a long time, but I can't help it. I like the wheel.
Fair enough. I still respect you. a little less, but I still respect you. I'm kidding. Anything else?
You were mentioning the movies like things spinning. You didn't mention that the storm, there's a cyclone, so the ocean itself is spinning.
Please, Dead Man's Chest, stop spinning things.
That was World's End.
Oh, was it? They're the same goddamn movie. They're just... Oh, God.
Which villain had the... Take Barbossa out.
Mm-hmm.
Who had the better death? Davy Jones, Blackbeard, or Javier Bardem?
I like Blackbeard's death because of the whole...
It reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Or not Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Fuck. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah, I thought you were also saying Princess Bride.
I didn't even think about
But yeah,
that.
the way that he's like saying like, you know, oh, Penelope Cruz, my daughter, sacrifice yourself for me. And she was gonna.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the whole switching thing. So, yeah, just the way it plays out, I think I like Blackbeard's the best. Obviously Barbossa had the best everything. But I said the first movie can't be touched. We have to live with that.
Literally 15 seconds before Barbossa died, he thought that just a mistake had been made.
Which is actually the biggest slap in the face because of that. So, or shot to the heart, I guess you could say. Literally. Alright, so I think we're done here. If this does end up going out on Halloween, I don't know what the hell is next. All I know is that Emily Blunt's miniseries, The English, is throughout November. I'm looking forward to talking about that. But other than that, I have no idea. So things will eventually come, and then December will be here, and we'll be doing God knows what then as well. And then we'll figure out what everything else. Awards videos will always be happening. Q&As will be happening. Movie clubs will be happening. That's what we know. Everything else, no idea. So, I guess we can end this here, pretty much. So, do you have anything to add?
No, last time I did, we ended up cutting it anyway.
And you didn't see that. So, until the next thing, I think that's it, right? Okay.